Hi, and welcome to At the Redline Podcast. My name is Alec Gonzalez. I'm the host of the podcast here. I'm planning to have people who would come and share their story, their faith, their ministry, the work of God that they're up to. And each time I come, I'm excited to welcome someone who's working for Jesus, loving Jesus, or has some business or acumen that they would want to share. My heart and desire is to see people free from busyness and hurry and overload and burnout. When I was pastoring and doing ministry, it seemed like so often I was operating at a speed, at a pace that didn't work in the long haul. And so my ministry, Coaching the Redline, is mostly about helping folks live at a pace that more reflects the plan that God designed us for. And so each time I'm going to be asking people not only their story, how they came to faith, and their business or ministry, what they're doing, but also dealing with how do we get along with the pace of life that we're in 2024. And this is something that I'm excited about and interested in. Each time we come, we're going to have someone new, and their story is going to be different each time. So anyway, thanks for joining me at the Redline Podcast. Okay, we're recording. Hi, it's my friend Ed Hoffman.
Hey, it's good to see you.
How you doing?
Better than I deserve.
Yeah?
That's my Dave Ramsey line.
Nice,
You know?
nice. So Ed's been a friend of mine for 10, 15 years. We've been hanging out.
Man, I think longer than that.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, you're right. It was back in the Randy Sylvia days, Life Center Men's Group stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we got better acquainted when you were in charge of chaplaincy, or were heavy into it. And then
Senior
you became
chaplain.
the senior chaplain, and I was one of your toadies.
Yeah.
And then we've been sort of hanging out ever since.
Yeah, it's good.
Friends. Yeah, gone through some ups and downs.
Well, we've seen some stuff, haven't we? I mean,
Yeah.
good, bad, or indifferent, we've seen some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been an
Anyway,
interesting journey.
tell us about yourself. Your childhood. You said before the first take. We have actually kind of almost a ritual of saying take two.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. I'll go clear back to the beginning. I'm Spokane born and raised. I grew up in a big corner lot house with 8 of my 10 siblings, and we all attended Catholic school right down the street, 4 blocks from the house, and we were if there were terrorists of the day, we were the hellions. We were the terrorists.
You were those kids.
Even though we were,
Good kids.
Yeah, I mean, we were good kids. We were pretty well behaved, but then we would go off the,
You got into your share of trouble. That's what you're saying.
Yes,
Nice.
a little bit.
Nice.
Not cop related stuff, but
Yeah.
definitely. I would say, I tell people I never received a beating that I didn't deserve, and I probably deserved a whole lot more than I received. But being number 9 of 10,
Yeah.
My mom, who had a stroke at 32, she actually didn't have the energy to chase the last really 3 of us around.
Yeah.
So my brothers Tom and Jerry and I we could do pretty much whatever we wanted, but if we got mouthy and lipped off to mom, our older brother Mike was a cheetah. He was a cross-country runner at North Central, and he could track us down like that.
Yeah.
And you weren't getting away.
Okay.
So he would drag us back to the cave, and mom would deal with us.
Nice.
So
Well, you talked earlier about your faith and how it started, but you also talked about the Catholic Church, raised Catholic, and honor that childhood faith. Tell us how you came to a more deeper understanding of knowledge of God.
wow.
The Christian faith.
So where to begin? I told you about accepting Christ at Ed Petrie's kitchen table, which was it was phenomenal. And then I got a job working for Kaiser, which is just something that the enemy loves to do, right? Is creep in and make us busy doing something else.
Yeah.
Take our eyes off the Lord, pull us out of church, get us directed in another way. And so I kind of, while I was connected, I kind of just got busy working and took my eyes off the Lord. Not that I didn't want to do, church and that kind of thing. It just wasn't consistent. Well, fast forward 10 years after I shut Kaiser Aluminum Mead Plant down in 2001, then it was like, okay, now what do you do when you grow up? What do you want to do now? So I ended up going back to school. I went to SCC for a while, got my degree there, or an associate's degree there, and then went to Whitworth, and I was going to teach. And in that transition period, I had gone to Life Center. I was attending Life Center. I think you were too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I was attending Life Center, and I knew that they were short on custodial staff. So I went to Jim Brewington, who was the executive or administrative pastor at the time, and I said, look, I know you're short on custodial help. I'd love to volunteer. And his response to me was, that's great, but, we should put you on a W-2 in case you got hurt. So that was kind of God's little hook to get me,
nice,
buttoned into the church. Not that I wasn't attending, but just more of a solidification. So I was started in August of 2005, and we made the move to the new building on Government Way in September. Our first service was September 11th, 2005.
Yeah.
And so I worked custodial for a while, and then the next thing I know, I'm working in the administrative side of the church, and then just going to Whitworth to do my elementary education degree, and K1 pastor job opened up, so I said, I'll try that, and loved it. I love kids, don't have any of my own, but I've got 23 nieces and nephews. I don't know how many greats at this point. Probably a great there somewhere. But
nice.
Yeah, so did K1 for a year, then did third, fourth, and fifth. And while I was in that, doing all that, then I was also leading Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. Did that for 4.5 years. I helped out in high school ministry and then in men's ministry. I was a part of men's ministry. And then I got roped into Randy, and I'll just give Randy high praise. I mean, God rest his soul, died on my birthday. Randy, Sylvia, meant the world to me, and tough loss for a lot of us.
Yeah.
For a lot of us. And the funny thing about Randy is, even when I was on the custodial staff, or if I was in my cubicle and Randy would walk by to head to the men's room, he always had his Bible with him. Oh, he's going to do some reading.
Nice.
So yeah, but
nice.
Just an amazing example of great relationship with the Lord.
He had a lot of impact on a lot of dudes. Yeah.
Well, just in our group, there was me, you, Mike Matheson, Larry Preston, Dave Cece, who I haven't heard from in forever. So Dave, if you're out there, hello. Let's catch up. And then people. Mike Fairburn.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So then you moved on to chaplaincy.
Yes.
You were doing that as a volunteer for quite a while.
A couple years.
Yeah.
Yes. So interesting thing on that, I was the available pastor on call, because we all had to do a shift rotation on available pastor duty. So I was the available pastor. We had a congregation member whose son was a heroin addict, and he had relapsed and wanted to get help. Went in, tried to get back into treatment, and they said, if you don't have a doctor's note or paperwork of some sort, we can't help you. So he chose to go home to his mother's garage and take his own life.
Oh, man.
So I got called out to that. Really, as you know, in the work that we do as chaplains, or that we did as chaplains, it's a ministry of presence. And literally, I didn't feel like I did anything, right? I mean, I sat there and prayed. A lot of times it feels that way, yeah. So Sarah, Jason's mom, was just aching, hurting beyond belief, understandably so. And then when I was getting ready to leave, Beth Wilson, the pastor the chaplain that was there, said, "Have you ever thought about chaplaincy?" And I said, "No," even though I was riding with who would become my best friend on the department, Craig Hamilton, in his canine unit. And the next thing you know, I'm meeting with Ron and Ray Flood, and John Anderson was another gentleman that came on at the same time I did, just about April, May of 2010, and started as a volunteer. And a couple years later, I ended up full-time, resigned my position as the one of the children's pastors at Life Center, and
nice.
Went to work full-time for SPD, Spokane Police Chaplaincy Board, and loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it.
What do you miss about being the chaplain in Spokane Police Department?
Well, my guys and gals, our officers do a tremendous job with little thanks, but they are out there day and night putting out their best effort to serve the community of Spokane. They get a bad rap a lot of the time. It's that vocal minority that, are pounding away from, on the computer from their mom's basement. And then, there's that vocal the silent majority that doesn't get out there and say, thank you, thank you enough for what we do. There are people that, say thank you, but it's just, we need to stand behind the men and women of law enforcement.
Yeah. So, is there anything else? You mentioned that you really like to do funerals and really appreciate the opportunity to serve families in a really difficult time. I mean, it's a gift and a service, but
right.
You said that you actually enjoy it. Like, I don't go to hospitals. Like, no, I hate it, but I can see the ministry there is really powerful.
So there's a distinct difference between police chaplaincy and a hospital chaplaincy. They're great at what they do in the hospital, but we're great at knowing what our officers need, and that's first and foremost. When we were doing it, it's, what do you need from me? Yeah. Let them do their investigation, but I'm here to support the emotional side of law enforcement, deal with the families. And out of that, there just became this connection with the local funeral homes where many of these families didn't have a pastor or a presence of any kind spiritually. Yeah. And so they would reach out and say, hey, would you be available to do a service? So obviously, I mean, I love to share the gospel, and I would rather do a funeral than a wedding. And that may sound really, really wackadoodle.
It's wackadoodle. I mean, we have a wedding venue. I would rather do a wedding than a funeral any day, but it's interesting. And
so let me share the components of what that looks like for me, from my perspective. Every wedding is or should have the component of God, Christ, what that union means, what God's brought together. And really there's one thing that couple's thinking about, and I don't have to say it, but when I go and serve families and the community, really, those people that come together to support those families in loss, people are wondering what's next.
Yeah.
They're questioning.
More open door.
They're questioning mortality.
Yeah. Good.
So I actually had a gentleman named Harold who used to be a funeral attendant at Heritage. And he came up to me. He's retired 3 times. He was a postman, he was a pastor, and a funeral attendant. So, but he came up to me. He was at my dad's service. I did my dad's service. It was a first service for me on January 6th, ironically, of 2018. And after that, he came up to me and he said, I've seen you do a lot of services, and I have to believe that you've reached more people for the kingdom in this room than you ever did up the street.
Interesting.
Because he knew that I was a pastor from Life Center. And that's not to take away from the work that I was able to do at Life Center, because it was rich. But to offer people who are questioning what's next. And one thing that I always stress with families is, even if they're not quote unquote religious or believers or whatever they want to spiritual, what they deem, I share with them my faith and where I'm at and what it looks like to me, and the importance of prayer and sharing scripture, if not for them, for the people that are believers that are in the audience. Yeah. And then just that opportune time to say, we're all children of God. Yeah. Every one of us in this room is a child of God, whether we acknowledge it or not. We're believers, and then we're unbelievers, all in this room together. But there's an opportunity for you to become a believer. And I try not to, it's not fire and brimstone, it's not turn or burn. It's just that one of my favorite scriptures to use at a memorial service is, everybody knows John 3:16, and I share this with families and community members that are there. Everybody knows John 3:16, and they've seen it at football games. Everybody holding up John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but will have everlasting life. But I said 3:17. Let's talk 3:17, because 3:17 shares with people the hope that really, it just gives me goosebumps, because it says, for God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save it through him.
Yeah.
And awesome. It's easy. It's not convoluted. God's not, as Joe would say, a cosmic killjoy. He loves us. He wants a relationship with us. And it was the greatest decision I ever made, was my relationship with Christ. And he's given me a voice. I've done over 330 memorials, whether that's a graveside, a funeral, and a full service with a graveside. They're awesome. They're rich. And like you talked about, doing podcasts and learning about people, I learned so much about people as I just take notes. Nice. of the life. Yeah. And it's a really good book. I've got them all saved. I could publish that. It's
nice.
It's awesome.
So after you did chaplaincy, you went and worked at Eastern for a little while. I think they call it
development.
That's the word it is. Yeah.
Yes.
And that lasted for a few years?
Yeah, a little over 3.
What do you miss about that?
Oh my gosh, what do I miss? So, I actually, the way that all transpired was, I met a VP that worked at Eastern. She's actually oversees development. She's a couple of different areas, but we got to talking. She said, in fact, let me say this. Alec was supposed to be on this call, but he had to go to work.
That's right. I was supposed to be on the call.
So
you went to a funeral or
hold on. Okay. Yes. So again, this was September 11th, 2019. September 11th, 2019. Alec was working, and our volunteer chaplains worked 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Alec had to get ready for work, couldn't take this one. So I remember Mark Zimmerman was the officer at the scene, called in, said, "Hey, we need the chaplain." So I took the call.
You had to go to work early that day.
Yeah, about 5:30. Oh my gosh, it was a stretch. But I get up there, I'm walking this gal and her boyfriend through next steps, what's going on. She said, "Well, you might know one of my friends." And I said, "Well, who's that?" And she said, "Well, Ryan Snyder." And I said, "Well, they sent his doppelganger." So, because everybody said Ryan Snyder and I looked alike, and we never saw it. We don't get it, but okay. So anyway, we started talking about chaplaincy and how I raise money and what that looks like. And she said, well, we have an opening at Eastern that you may want to apply for.
Yeah.
I applied for it, didn't get it. But when I was talking to the gal that eventually hired me, she said, but we like your skill set and what you have to offer. And we've created another position and it's yours if you want it. That's him.
That's cool.
That's him. And really, it was a great opportunity for me to really get away from, I love chaplaincy, and my intent was to go back and volunteer again. And some things happened that just wasn't a feasible option. But it was a good break for me because, you only want to do that for so long.
It's a tough ministry that does take its toll. So then you moved on to where you're currently at, which is Catholic Charities.
Catholic Charities.
So talk about what you do there and what you love about it.
Well, oh my gosh. So it's funny. One of the guys that I worked with at Eastern, my friend Dennis Hake, he's like an older brother, and we just rib each other all the time, but just a great man. And he'd retired. And then he was talking to a friend of his at Catholic Charities because he previously worked there, and they were looking for somebody to come in and do development work for them. They'd never had anybody as purely a development officer. They've got somebody in plan giving, which, there's a couple of different little baskets, in development, but plan giving is one of them. And so they wanted a plan giving or a development officer solely for meeting with donors, sharing the vision of what Catholic Charities has and what they're doing. And I took a lot of heat from a lot of cops, and God bless them. They have to deal with a lot, but I will just say that Catholic Charities doesn't have a homeless problem. They don't have a drug and crime problem. These are societal problems and police problems, which are, they're a tough one to tackle. It takes all of society and all of community to, one, stand behind our law enforcement officers. As I've said before, we need to be better as a community in reaching out to those less fortunate that are hurting. And that's a lot of work. But in my role at Catholic Charities, it's really about getting in front of donors and saying, look, these are the great things we do. And there's housing and the havens are only one part of the amazing work that they do. There's St. Anne's, there's Catalyst, there's, Kappa, there's all these other areas. And people give to what they're passionate about. And so I try and tap into their passion, but we also need an operating budget. And so people don't want to give to salaries, but in all actuality, if we don't have Catholic Charities, we're 5,000 beds down. And I will say this, Catholic Charities is building 4 more units, one in Colville, one in Twisp, one in Clarkston, and another one here in Spokane. The one that they're building in Colville will be 70 or 75 units, and it will take Colville's homeless population to a net 0.
Nice.
So,
I want to move on because you got a lot of interests, and I want to talk about them. But before we do move on from Catholic Charities,
right?
If someone's watching the podcast and they're thinking, I want to give to Catholic Charities, how would they find you?
Oh my gosh, you could call me personally, 509-724-1848, and then just look me up on the web.
Nice. So you have talked to me about several things that you're kind of passionate about. One is fishing and guiding, and the other is maybe doing a podcast or something. Talk about what's next for you.
Oh, well, I'm recovering from back surgery, you know that. But I'm going to go back to work, here in a couple of weeks. And I'm excited for that because I do not sit still well. And so that's praise God. I had a great surgeon and I'm feeling way better. So, yeah, long-term outlook, retirement kind of gig is I would really like to guide, not on a large scale, but just local lakes.
Yeah.
As I was thinking that my back was getting better, in early February, I'd bought some new gear and I was gearing up to go over, and I really want to learn the Chinook fishery in Lake Coeur d'Alene because they're catching big fish, and I want to take people over and help them catch and release big fish. I'm not so much worried about keeping them. They can keep them if they want, but Lake Roosevelt, silver. I mean, I want to learn the tiger muskie fishery. It's the fish of 1,000 casts at Silver Lake at Newman. Bass fishing. I just want to be on the water. I love to hunt. I love to golf. I don't know what that'll look like, with you saw the chunk that they took out of my back.
His back, yeah. So
I don't know how much packing I'll be doing, but we'll see what God's got for me to do. But I want to keep doing, celebrations of life, and that really is a passion of mine. Is helping people celebrate their family members well, and I would. We're called to be fishers of men, and I mean, let's go fishing and let's talk Jesus on the water.
Nice. All right. Well, parting words. Anything you want to end our conversation on?
I would say if you don't know Jesus and you're watching this, don't make it more complicated than it needs to be.
No.
Send a message to Alec, and I'm very chill. I would say that if you look in Mark, Christ called his first apostles just disciples saying, "Follow me."
Yeah.
And you don't have to be deep. It's, as we talked, our faith journey is, it's like this. It's not, like this.
Yeah.
So, but, the other thing is people often have said to me, "Well, you're a religious guy," and I stop them there and I just say, "Look, I'm not a religious guy. Religious connotation means you do and do and do and do to attain what's already been done. I have a relationship with the most important person that's ever walked the planet, and that's my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ."
Nice.
So,
well said, Ed.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me.
That's all for today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
This is Alec at Coaching the Redline. Coaching the Redline is my practice of spiritual direction and coaching, life coaching. Spiritual direction is a work of focusing on the relationship of God. If you have a relationship with God, or you want a relationship with God, and you want help thinking about it and talking about it and understanding what is going on with your relationship with God, spiritual direction is a great practice to help you make sense of what's going on between you and God. I know that in my life, after we closed our church, there was a time in which I really had to really wrestle. What does it mean to give myself completely to God? And spiritual direction has been such a blessing for me to be able to talk through what's going on in my heart, in my mind, in my spirit, in my body, as it relates to my affection and my life and my connection and love for God. It's been super helpful. And life coaching is a little different in that it's focused on action, it's focused on goals, it's focused on what do you want to achieve, and then finding the path, listening to the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, your own internal dialogue, and what's going on within you. It's not mentoring. I'm not a coach in the sense that I'm going to tell you what you ought to do. I still have my opinions, but I'm going to ask questions that leads to direction, that leads to action, that leads to the fulfillment of the goals that you set for yourself as a coachee. I'd love to talk to anybody that's interested in coaching or spiritual direction. And I'm going to try and post this video in front of or behind all my videos that I make. That's all for today.